So AJ Zito is the founder, gunsmith, and lead instructor for Practical Performance. He's a former member of the U.S. Army, certified protection specialist, and personal security detail instructor, and formerly the primary and lead firearms instructor for multiple companies. AJ's focus after leaving the security and protection world has been on the concealed/covert carrying and deployment of firearms. He is a USPSA Master in Single Stack Division, as well as a multi-division Master in IDPA, and he also holds several expert and master ratings in multiple firearms disciplines, including pistol, carbine, and precision rifle. In 2017, he completed a full-time 3-year gunsmithing education in general to advance gunsmithing, custom competition, carry, and guild quality firearms. He brings a vast knowledge of ballistics, instruction, competition, and real-world employment of firearms to the table. I would say so. We're so excited to have AJ on tonight. Welcome to the show, AJ.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me. You are now my new hype person. That was amazing.
Well, I don't know where the energy comes from this week, but I'm so glad to have it back. There's been a few weeks in the past that I haven't really, I've been dragging a little bit, so it's good to have some energy back tonight.
Awesome.
We're going to have a good show here. So just to give you guys an overall general broad view of where I want to take this interview, I do obviously want to talk to AJ about his gunsmithing career and guns in general. He's the gun dude to talk to, right? About 1911 specifically. But I do also want to get into his competitive shooting career and talk a little bit more about his approach to not only teaching, but the mental game of shooting, because that is something I know a lot of you are interested in as well. So AJ, let's just start with sort of the timeline. I don't think there's anything I left out necessarily in that introduction. I think it was comprehensive. But
nope, there's my resume right there. My entire bio is there now.
Worth it though, and I couldn't leave any of it out, right? So you're a masterclass shooter. When did you obtain that status, and how long of a process was it getting there?
That is a great question. I cannot actually remember the date when I made master in USPSA. I think it was 2019, 2018 or 2019. I made master class, and yeah, quite the process. Since I had been shooting basically competitively since 2014, I believe. So it took me that long, however many years, 5 years, 6 years ish, in order to make masterclass. And it was hard.
Well, it wouldn't be so sweet if it only took, 30 days for you to get to that level, right? I mean, so for those that don't understand or don't know USPSA, could you talk about the percentage levels between the classes for us?
Sure, absolutely. So in USPSA, and this is one of really the reasons I love USPSA, for a majority of the matches you shoot, there's one stage or sometimes two stages dedicated to a classifier stage. And what a classifier stage is basically, it's a stage that they have a gabillion data sets on, because basically every time that stage has been shot in a match since its existence, the data has been tracked from that stage. So because of that, we get a huge amount of data, and we create a classification system. And the way that works is everything is based off of what's known as a high hit factor. We use what's called hit factor scoring, which basically boils down to the amount of points you shoot divided by the time it takes you to shoot them. It roughly works out to how many points you score a second. So it seems really complicated, but in the end of the day, it's really not. It's just more complicated than like time plus scoring. So because of that, right, we have these high hit factors, which means the highest recorded data for that particular classifier, that stage, that have been recorded. So that high hit factor becomes 100%, right? Mm-hmm. That's the best that classifier is. Mm-hmm. And then based on your ability, how you shoot the classifier. And the way it works in USPSA is it's your best 6 of your most recent 8 classifiers determine your classification. So you shoot this, and the way it breaks down, 95 to 100% is what's known as a grandmaster. And then 85 to 94.9999 repeating is a master class shooter. That basically boils, the way it breaks down is you shot 85 to 94% of the greatest shooters in the world.
Right.
And then it flows down from there. An A-class shooter is 75% up to 84%, so on and so forth. So it's just the way they do their classification system. And it's by no means perfect, but it's a great way to compare yourself against a huge data set.
And isn't there a huge body of people in that B class? I've heard people say that it's
yep
hard to get out of that B class.
Yeah, B class is like the Bermuda Triangle. It's really easy to get into B class, and it takes you forever, and it's really hard to get out of B class. When I started shooting USPSA, I was right into B class, and I was like, all right, this is going to go good. I'm going to be out of here so fast. And it took a long time to get out of B class because the range is so broad in B class. So,
right. It's a big pool, isn't it?
It is. It sure is.
Yeah.
It's and the requirement to get to A class at 75% is incredibly difficult. A lot of people, I don't think, do it enough justice and recognizing how difficult that is to actually just get into A class. So yeah.
So how did you scratch your way through? What was the breakthrough point? What was it? Was there something?
There was, and I'm embarrassed about what it is, honestly.
Why?
Okay, so what had happened was, so I had been stuck in B class for a long time, and actually, now I might be misremembering how this. It was me. It wasn't me getting out of B class. It was me getting out of A class. Now that I'm remembering.
Okay, well, that's okay.
Yeah. So B class, in order to get out of it, I just had to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, and I got out of B class. But then I was stuck in A class at the same percentage for 2 years, even though I was competing very heavily. So your percentage changes depending on every match you shoot. And somehow I shot just good enough and just poor enough to stay at the same percentage for 2 years and never bump up, which was 84%. And then
well, you were right there then.
yeah, which is really frustrating for 2 years not to be able to get, a half a percentage point to bust me over.
Right.
And then, so at that time, I was shooting a single stack 1911 in 9mm, and we have different scoring depending on the type of ammunition you're using. We have major power factor and minor power factor. So I was shooting a minor power factor load, which is 9mm, and I remember the last classifier I shot, I missed getting my bump to master class by 1 point. Which was the difference between shooting minor and major and shooting 1 Charlie instead of an alpha. So I was so frustrated that I went home and I pulled an old 1911 45 ACP out of the closet, and that became my new competition gun. And the next match I made master. So
really,
unfortunately, it was a gear thing that bumped me over. Just because of the way the point system works. But yeah.
So is this what you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you want to be like a gunsmith and a competitive shooter?
Oh no, absolutely not.
No.
So when I was a kid and when I was growing up, and even all the way through high school and into college, honestly, I thought I was gonna be a military career guy for the rest of my life. you know, I went to college and joined the Army, and I did 3.5 years there and got out right away, and then was like, oh man, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life now. So,
Mm-hmm.
and things, you know, I just kind of followed different things and ended up, you know, being gunsmith. I always knew I liked teaching. So teaching was
Mm-hmm.
always a passion of mine, even high school and college. So I knew I wanted to teach something, and probably, you know, later on in life, I recognized firearms related stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
And
then again, yeah,
you spent like 3 years. You put your teaching career on hold to become a gunsmith, right?
I did. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I decided, so I was working for a school actually in Grand Junction, Colorado, at the time.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
Yep. And I decided I was going to uh, go to guns. So at the time I was working in the private sector, trying to get overseas contracts, and that was few and far between. So I figured I need something to do in between these contracts that never seem to go anywhere. So I was working at this school, and they had a bunch of rental guns, and you know, guns we issued to students for the courses. And no one knew how to work on them. So I was already working on my own stuff. So I ended up
Mm-hmm.
working on the school stuff. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I should probably like go get some sort of certification in this, and maybe people can pay me while I'm
Mm-hmm.
not on a contract, and I can, you know, work on guns or something. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's how I ended up at gunsmithing school. When I went to gunsmithing school, I stopped everything because it was a full-time commitment, Monday through the course I went was Monday through Friday, you know, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day for, you know, 2 semesters a year. So it's
Mm-hmm.
regular college at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no time for teaching, or I figured out a way to have a lot of time for shooting, but maybe not the best
Of
way I should have
course.
gone about it. But you know, some days you just don't have projects to work on, so that's a range
Yeah.
day to me.
Yeah, I
So,
hear you. Well, I don't know if you know this, but my husband builds custom saddles. And so
oh,
the
awesome.
whole idea of being a custom maker of anything intrigues me because I kind of know I wouldn't say the lifestyle, but kind of is because when you're in the custom world, um there's a lot of things that you come to know about your trade that just the common everyday person just doesn't know. It doesn't mean they're dumb.
Yeah.
It's just that you have just dug so deeply into mastering whatever your trade is that you appreciate it in a way that no one else really can, unless they're also in that field. And so that is one thing that I sort of identify with you on that. So, hi, Adam. How are you?
Hi. Hey, AJ. Hey, you said gunsmithing so fast it sounded like guns. So
What? You cut out.
you speak because you. Oh, okay. So
It
if you
was
can hear
going so
me,
well.
Yeah. I
AJ,
know.
you said
Welcome to live broadcast.
you done smithing so fast it sounded like you said sniffing. So
Oh.
because 2011, can you tell us about?
You're gonna have
You're
to do
gonna
it
have
one
to
more time, brother.
Yeah, you're gonna have to put it in the comments, Adam, or something, or sign language. No, even the sign language wouldn't work because you're frozen. That darn motel internet, I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Get you every time.
Teaching life on the road. There it
I
is.
know. I know. Well, okay, so he thought you said gun sniffing, or I said gun sniffing. I did not. I said gunsmithing. And what I mean by that is building custom guns, fixing guns. Yeah, maybe you should tell me exactly what that means. Maybe I don't know, AJ.
No,
Everything that you do.
you're right on all accounts.
Okay.
So gunsmithing is a very broad term, frankly. So it's hard to say what's right and what's wrong. There are gunsmiths who they don't build custom guns.
Oh,
Yep, absolutely. They only repair and work on like factory style guns. There are specialist gunsmiths. So technically, so I like to say I have a classical gunsmithing background or
classical.
education. Yes,
Okay.
because I had to I had to go through the gunsmithing program where, while I'm known for building 1911s and 2011s now, I built precision rifles. I worked on shotguns. I worked on everything under the sun for a long time, and had to learn all those things before I could kind of specialize in what I am. So technically today, even though I am a gunsmith, many people would refer to me as a pistol smith, which isn't incorrect either. Just because I do specialize in handguns and pistols. But gunsmithing is such a broad term. There are gunsmiths that all they do is like one modification, one very specific modification.
Yeah.
Versus I have a very good friend who's a very well-known gunsmith down the road, Dave Fink, from Fink's Custom. And his shop they are primarily a general gunsmith. They'll work on everything and anything that you need worked on. And,
that's funny because saddle shops are the same way.
Yep.
There's so much crossover in that. And it's funny because whenever somebody orders a custom saddle, sometimes they think they know what they want. It turns out they don't. Like their first thing out of their mouth is, I want a whatever, fill in the blank. And then by the time the order is placed, they have done something completely different because what they thought they wanted wasn't really what either they needed or they even wanted, because they didn't know what they didn't know. And so is a lot of what you do educating people about guns?
It absolutely can be. I mean, that is, that correlation is spot on. So spot on. When I got into the gunsmithing portion, right, I thought I was going to be, for the most part, a truly bespoke gun builder. Like I was going to have these clients, they were going to call me. They're like, oh, this is exactly what I want. And because it does all these things and I know all this stuff and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And what I quickly found out is, and this is not a dig at all, but it's just the way the industry works.
Yeah.
People see a picture of a gun they really like, and they're like, I want you to build this. And I'm like, oh, well, do you want it in this and this and this? And you want me to do this? They're like, just build this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Or something of that nature. Hey, I know I want this thing. And I'm like, well, do you want it with these 711 options? Hey man, I don't know that. I just want you to build the thing. So
Right. Well, the KISS method, even in custom work, is a thing.
Yep.
Now you got to keep it simple for people and not overcomplicate it, because you can do a million different variations of sometimes the same type of thing. So, and I don't claim to be any kind of expert with guns. I know how my gun works. I know really well how my gun works. And I'm familiar with 1911s and how they run. But could you explain maybe to people who may not know why someone would prefer a 1911 or 2011 versus a polymer frame gun?
Sure. Really simple reason. They're just better. So no,
that's simple enough.
Right. There you go. No. So that's a great question. Right. So the 1911 has certain similarities with modern polymer guns, but it has a lot of differences with modern polymer guns. And actually, if you look at most modern polymer guns, they take something off of the 1911. 1911 is probably the most iconic handgun ever produced, especially in the United States. But a lot of that's attributed to, John Moses Browning being a genius. But there are inherent things that are currently done on the 1911 that no other platform does. Typically we see, especially in the aftermarket for what name your favorite polymer pistol, trigger systems. This trigger system feels just like a 1911. And it's like, well, that's not true. But it's trying to be a 1911. And the reason they do that is because the 1911, from a mechanical standpoint, has probably the greatest trigger in any pistol ever built, because it doesn't utilize a hinged design, a single pin with a hinge design trigger. It uses, we all have heard you're supposed to press a trigger straight back to the rear. Well, the 1911 is the only trigger design that actually moves straight back.
You have
to the
no
rear.
other way to pull the trigger on a 1911, right?
That is correct.
That's the only way it can be pulled.
Yep.
Okay.
That is absolutely correct. So, and that one small thing lends to, and I hate this term, but I use it when speaking about designs, but the inherent accuracy of the system. Mechanically, it's a superior trigger system. And then we have other things that, the system excels at, especially with modern custom or semi-custom 1911s. There are really no other handguns that can produce the type of accuracy that the 1911 can produce. There's a reason why when you go to like a bullseye competition, no one's shooting a Beretta 92 for accuracy. Unless, of course, it's a service pistol competition and they have to do that, right? But the guys that at the top of the game, look at Bianchi Cup, look at any of the accuracy-oriented pistol things. The 1911 is king there, and it's because of the way the barrel locks up and the accuracy you can pull out of the system compared to a modern polymer system.
Well, and there is no polymer on it either, right?
That is correct. Now with the 2011, what's become known as the 2011, but really the double stack 1911, a majority of them have a polymer grip module, which is not the same as a polymer frame. The frames are actually still made of steel or aluminum, and then it just has the grip and the trigger guard are polymer. But that's not the same as a polymer framed gun. And on a traditional 1911, there's no plastic on that gun, which
how can that help you as a shooter?
So there is a significant difference in the way the guns behave, specifically in recoil, right? A lot of polymer guns rely on the polymer to flex under recoil, and that has a dampening effect. Right. Now, some flex more than others. Some are intended not to flex at all. But part of the thing about polymer is it's incredibly light, which makes a gun very easy to carry around all day, and also less than desirable to shoot for long extended sessions. The 1911 being a primarily steel framed gun, you shoot a 9mm out of a 1911 and you think you're shooting 22 sometimes. It's kind of silly, in fact, especially if you have really good mechanics. It's like, I can't believe this is happening. So,
hey, this might be a good time for me to try to pull up that video, because we have a video of you shooting the, oh man, what was it called?
Latham triple bills.
Yes. The Latham triple bill drill, and it's on your channel. So if you guys want to go and watch this later, you can go to Practical Performance on YouTube. But let me see if I can add this to. Yes, it's gonna work. Maybe. Maybe. Hold on. I don't usually do this, but I think it's fun. That's insane. Okay. That's insane, because okay, because you're shooting 1911, you're reloading constant. Your reloads are like butter. They have to be.
Well, it is a large part of the game and something I
Right.
struggle with often.
Right. But yeah, that looks like fun to shoot that gun.
It is. It is a ton of fun. At, there's something different about 1911s. Some guys will tell you it's the aesthetics of the gun, but a lot of us attribute it to 1911s have a soul that other mass-produced guns just don't have.
Well, I hate
Plus,
to relate this again to custom saddles, but you know how you said that, well, the lighter guns are easier to carry, than the steel frame guns. We have a thing in saddle making too. And just in saddles, people have been like, well, I want a custom saddle, but I want it to be super lightweight. Okay, well, the materials that are made in a really high quality saddle, most of the time are heavier weight things.
sure.
And that is part of, generally speaking, the difference between a factory made saddle and a custom saddle. The weight difference, not always, but a lot of the time is definitely different. And so, again, it's just like there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But once you like kind of set your path on what it is that you really like, even if like on the custom saddles, you'll take that heavier weight saddle because it'll last longer. It's more durable. Once it's broke in, like, oh, the best thing ever. I can just see the similarity. So I'll quit
Yep.
talking about it. But that's what I can relate to as far as that's concerned. But let me move on. I
Yep.
digress.
But you're spot on. You're spot on, and these are all reasons why
Yeah, what matters to
people
you,
like
right?
me choose 1911s. I mean, it's
Right.
just we have 1911s that guys, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of rounds through the same gun. They've
Mm-hmm.
rebarreled it, 2, 3, 4 times. They've welded the
Mm-hmm.
frame 2 times, 3 times, and the guns just keep on going.
Right.
And nothing shoots like them. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, I'm not even a 1911 person. I'm starting to be like, maybe I need another gun.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, why not? Well, let's move on to your competitive shooting just a little bit more, and get out of the gunsmithing world for just a second, because I want to get into a little bit about your mental process, your approach to coaching and shooting, and all of those cool things. So do you think that, how there's the debate out there, I guess, about competitive shooting, and then if you want to be a defensive shooter, that you shouldn't shoot competition, then others think vice versa. So what is your opinion about, does shooting in competitively help you defensively?
Sure, absolutely. So let me preface this with at one point in my life I was very anti competitive shooting because I
Really?
was that guy 100%. Coming out of the military and the circles I was running in, especially within executive protection and the tactical shooting community,
Yeah.
competitive shooting was a huge no-no,
Hmm.
and to the point where looking back now, it was so silly. Like, you guys even shot a competition before? Why are we? Maybe we should just look at this, because we
Mhm.
all can. At least I can remember being a kid, and randomly on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m., ESPN would have some shooting show on it, and you're like, oh, these guys are going so fast, and that looks so cool, and that's competitive shooting. Now I think if you are not competing as a defensive shooter, you are leaving a lot on the table that
Hmm.
you really should get into competitive shooting. And I can tell you the moment it happened. Um, I I was in Chicago. Yeah, Chicago. Um, in between jobs, and I was at home and I found a USPSA match, and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go shoot this USPSA match. I'll probably win because I'm a tactical shooter and I'm real good. So I'm the best shooter I know. So clearly I'm gonna go home with something."
Oh
Um,
boy.
yeah, and I was wrong. I make this joke all the time, but it's true. Here I showed up a guy, out of the military with combat experience in a field where I carry a gun for a living, and a dentist whooped me like there was no tomorrow.
Oh boy.
Like I had never even touched a gun before.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just the
Humble
dentist.
pie.
Oh,
You got
absolutely.
a piece of humble pie. Yeah.
Big time.
We've all
Big
done
time,
that from time to time.
It was the shipping clerk and the dentist and the guy that works at Target and the this and that and the everyone. And I'm like, I do this for a living and I am not nearly as good as these people. Which kind of brings us to the defining moment in most people's shooting, which happens right at that moment. The point where we can decide to let our ego take over and never go back and shoot against those people again because it's just competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I play for keeps and all that stuff. Or we can put our ego aside, understand that there might be skills that these people possess that will make us better at everything else we do with a gun. So maybe we should try and figure that out. And that, luckily is the route I took. And it led me into, at the time I had really plateaued as a shooter. I could not seem to get better no matter how many rounds I threw down range. No matter how many classes I went to, I just wasn't getting better and I couldn't figure it out. At the time, I must have shot 40,000 rounds a year just of pistol and did not get any better. And when I found competitive shooting, I had actual things I could see and transfer the information and follow and chase that were completely contrary or completely different than everything I had done in the past. And it took my shooting to just a completely different level. And I would encourage anyone that's serious about, defensive use of a firearm to get into some competition. It doesn't have to be USPSA. That's just my preferred sport. It can be IDPA. It can be, outlaw matches. It can be 3-gun. I don't care what it is, but the benefits of competition are just, I can't sing its praises enough. From just putting yourself under that stress, and it's social stress. It's not mortal stress, but hey, your body really doesn't know the difference between the two.
Right.
We hear this all the time. Oh, I completely forgot what I was doing the minute the timer went off.
Yeah.
Oh, but gunshots won't affect you. Sure. Why would that be any different? Our body just doesn't understand it.
Right.
So it's fantastic. And I try and incorporate that a lot into my classes as well. And into my teaching. There's stuff in my classes that are, at the end of the day, shooting is shooting, whether it's competitive shooting or tactical oriented or combative oriented shooting. Shooting is shooting. It's about mechanics. It's about mechanics. And then there's processing, right? There's mental processing that has to happen on both ends. You will get better at mental processing by shooting competitively, because despite what everyone thinks, even though you get to walk a stage plan, which in the military we used to call rehearsals, apparently everyone forgot about those. But you have to adapt on the fly constantly in competitive shooting. A piece of steel didn't fall. You miss a shot and you have to re-engage a target, which now throws your entire load plan on. You are constantly processing information at speed. And you know how you get better at processing information at speed? You do it a lot and over and over and over again. So, which helps your decision-making processes all around. So yeah, huge benefits. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but
I love it. I love it, because you're going right down the trail that I was going to take you anyway, which is the mental game in shooting. How important is the mental game in shooting? Once you have established subconscious competence in your skill level and you're maintaining that high level, isn't everything else mental? And what would you give as advice for people out there who are struggling with that part of the game? Because I would argue that's the larger percentage of the game.
Yeah, I definitely won't disagree with that. Everyone thinks the guy that wins the match is, the guy that shoots the match perfect, and that's not correct. No one has ever shot a match perfectly ever in the history of competitive shooting. It's the guy who makes the least amount of scorable mistakes, right? Whether that's time or hits, that's who wins, and that's life too.
Right. Yeah.
Who messes up the least wins. And at the end of the day, who gets the fastest, most critical hits first wins. So, I forgot where I was going with this question.
Well, I have another question about the mental game, and that
Yes.
is there such a thing as trying too hard? Can you push so hard that I've heard Riley Bowman talk about this? Like he's always trying to perform at 90% or something like that. He's never
Sure.
trying to perform at 100. He's trying to maintain 90 and keep upping that 90. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's not a new concept in competitive shooting. When we train, when we practice, right? In my belief, there's a difference between training and practicing. But when we really practice, we are always trying to operate at about 100% if we can.
Oh, that's it. I remember now. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but that's it. And then
Yeah.
everyone thinks the work is done in the match or whatever. The work is not done in the match. The work is done in practice, so that when we get to the match, I think 90% is maybe a little too far down. I'm trying to operate.
He
at
could
about
have said a different
95%.
percentage.
Sure.
I don't remember.
Well, it's different people believe different things.
Yeah.
But yes, we're not trying to operate at 100 because frankly, our consistency at 100% of our ability is just not there,
Yeah.
And we can't rely on 100%. It's also why this, we see this debate all the time, and I'm just going to use this one as the example, the 1 second draw. People lost their mind over this 1 second draw and fail to recognize that it's not about having a 1 second draw. It's about being as fast as you possibly can, using essentially your subconscious capability, right? So that when you need that fast draw or a 1-2-5 draw, as my friend Scott says, you will have it under stress. So in the match, your 1 turns into a 1-2-5 or a 1-1-5, right? But if the best you can ever get is that 1-2-5, you're never going to get that under stress, because that's
Right.
you operating at 100% of your ability. And we as humans, we just don't perform well at 100% of our capability. We don't.
Not consistently.
Correct. And that's
Yeah.
really the name of the game is the consistency.
Right.
We back to that whole mental game thing, right? Is the consistency aspect of how we do things. It's amazing to watch. I hate to say the rituals you see in competitive shooting. You see guys make ready the same way every single time. And the reason that is, everyone, has their own things, but the reason that is because at some point in that person's shooting experience, something has occurred that caused them to do that make ready that way. Whether they forgot to turn a red dot on, so every time they take a sight picture, whether they didn't seat a mag all the way, so when they seat the mag, they give it a tug every time, whether they, something, they have that ritual because of their consistency, because they knew at some point they made a mistake and they don't ever want to make that mistake again. So if they consistently do the same thing the same way every time, they will avoid those mistakes. Right.
Yeah. And Brian talks about as coaches, we tend to coach people on things we struggled with the most.
Yeah.
And I've found that to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, we can relate to that struggle.
Yeah.
You know, there
Yeah.
are people that have struggles in shooting that we will just never be able to relate to because we haven't experienced it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, I don't have that issue. But the best thing we can always do, at least from the coaching side, is we know people who have had that issue, and we talk to
Right.
them, and we get that information, and we see what's worked for them. You know, and as a community, we all get better at everything we do. So
Right.
yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Well, and I don't know how the hour's flying by, guys, but we only have 15 minutes left, and
Oh
I
boy.
feel so sad about that because I have so many more questions, but I'm just going to the highest priority ones at this point. So if you have questions for AJ, we're going to be doing those here soon. So be thinking about those, get those in the comments, and we'll be wrapping up here in about 15 minutes. But AJ, so speak a little bit more about your coaching process and how you get people. What are the objectives that you take when approaching a student? And do you have a unique coaching style that it maybe isn't like other people that we might see?
Sure. So I'll tell you right now, I have zero objectives when I start coaching a student, because the coaching is not about me. The coaching
Mhm.
is about them, right? So when I take a student, you know, there's a big difference between a class and a one-on-one. But I try to integrate those same ideas of the personal instruction from one-on-one sessions into the classes that I teach, you know, which we do right at the beginning. Hey, tell me what your goals are here in this class. And I will tailor, you know, some people are very gifted where their class is exactly the same every time you take it, right? Which is an amazing skill, because you know exactly what you are getting when you get there, which is awesome. That the consistency of that is amazing. But my classes, they're going to change a little bit based on the students and what the students, you know, if I hear a trend coming up, hey, I wanted to learn this. Hey, I want to focus on this. I'll adjust my class to address those issues. And if that means we change an entire block of instruction, so be it, because that's what the student is concerned about. Not necessarily what they need or what they want, but they're at least concerned enough about it to say, hey, I want to learn more about this. So I will try and tailor that kind of stuff. I'll tell you the biggest thing that separates, and separates me from a lot of other guys, but it also separates my coaching, is I have pretty much made every mistake under the sun when it comes to shooting. I have gone down rabbit holes upon rabbit holes, both with tactical shooting and competitive shooting, that you know, led to bad places. You know, not good shooting and not good habits and not good skills. So I've made the mistakes, and I think that gives me kind of a unique knowledge of, you know, why we do a lot of the things we do, or why we start following or going down certain paths in our shooting. You know, I can very much remember being a newer shooter, and going down these gross motor skill paths, and later on in my, you know, because I made those mistakes later on in my life, discovering, wow, that's not entirely accurate. There's way more to this process, and way more to the I hate to, the human body that I don't understand enough about in order to be making these kinds of decisions. So I've done the things, I've made the mistakes, and granted, you know, that it's rare I come across anything I haven't heard of before, but it does happen. You know, it does happen. I've played the front sight focus game. I've played the mag flip thing. I've done,
and the click
all
banger
the
thing. I heard you say you
Yep.
used to be a click banger too.
Yep.
Yeah. For those
Big
that
time.
don't understand what that is, that's just resetting the trigger every time you pull the trigger, right?
Absolutely. You know, often referred to as a pin and reset. So you
Yeah.
pin the trigger through recoil,
Mhm.
get the click of the mechanical reset of the gun, and then you start pressing the trigger again. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I didn't even know I was doing it for years,
Really?
and
You didn't even
years.
know you were doing it?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Wow.
I can remember very clearly the moment I discovered it. Credit where credit's due. Mike Seeklander. I was in a class with him, and he's like, "You pin the trigger." I'm like, "No, I don't." And he's like, "Yep, you totally do." I'm like, okay. And we shot a bill drill, and sure enough, at the end of the bill drill, now when I decided to shoot, 6 rounds, okay, I'll shoot 6 rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But on the last round, I have the trigger pinned, which means if I
Yeah.
needed more than 6, I'd have to go back to reset. So, yep,
Right.
I've made
And
the
that's how you knew.
mistakes. Yep,
Yeah.
I've made the mistakes. I've been there.
Well, whenever we were on the phone the other day, you said something about, I mean, we're talking about choices here, in our life, and we all make choices. And it sounds like you've made, part of your being a good teacher is that you said you've gone through lots of different things. And so you try to help your students, maybe perhaps avoid those things. But
Mhm.
you said that there was one choice in your life that changed the trajectory of it. But you didn't tell me what it was. So I'm curious. What was that, and what did you learn from that?
Sure. So when I was in college, so I went to college in Vermont, Military College of Vermont, and I had a choice I had to make, which was either to be Army or to enlist in the Army. And my whole life, I had this idea that I was going to enlist in the Army, which for some people that are familiar with the difference, officers on the leadership side, enlisted, you start at the bottom and work your way to the top kind of leadership. So I had it in my mind that I was going to enlist in the military. And when it came time to make that choice, I had several factors that I made the choice to become an officer, not because it's what I thought it was the right thing to do, but because of what my and I don't hold this against them, but what my family wanted me to do. And I have regretted that decision my entire life. And it absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. But I say that now only knowing the path that I went down. And that's part of it. I will never know what that other path or where that other path might have taken me. And, parts of me are like, oh man, grass is always greener, of course, but where would life have taken me had I gone down that path? And so, here I am today, almost 20 years later after that decision. And I think about that almost daily. And it's a good thing. My wife and I talk about this all the time. And she she keeps me honest and straight and everything about, hey, you got to remember that things change every day, and you have to live with the decisions you make, but make better decisions based on good information, not necessarily emotional information. Um, and that was an emotional decision that I made for other people instead of myself. Not that that's always the wrong answer, but at that point it was not the right answer for me. And here I am 20 years later, still possibly regretting that decision. So I try not to let those things and let other people's necessarily opinions drive my focus and my desires in life. And I think that's important. That's important for all of us, especially as shooters. Um, I have followed friends across deserts and seas and the entire world in the pursuit of fortune and glory. And here I am today now, doing things that I want to do, not necessarily what anyone else wants to do. And I think that's important for us to recognize what our goals are, what our wants are, especially in shooting. what kind of shooter do you want to be? What kind of defender do you want to be? You know, do you want to be the greatest person living with a handgun? Then this is what it takes. Do you want to be, you know, the guy that can shoot a baseball at a mile? Well, okay, but this is the decision that you're going to make, and this is how it's going to take you to different places. So like I said, I think about that every day, and I try not to repeat the mistakes of my past, and hopefully not build up more regret over time.
Well, AJ, it's led you to us, and we're incredibly grateful for that. So,
well, thank you.
So I don't think it was a mistake.
That's what my wife tells me all the time as well.
Well, she is smart. You should listen to her.
She is. I know. I really should. But sometimes I just can't.
I know the feeling. Well, that was really good. I'm so glad that you shared that with us. We're going to go into the Q&A here in just a second. We've got a few questions, and there's a little bit more time if you guys want to pop something in the comments. But really quickly, I just wanted to give a shout out again to defenders-live.com. Guys, I really wish you would go there and check that out. You can see all the past guests that we've had on. We've recently partnered with Patriot Mobile. And so go to the partners page and check out all the cool companies we've partnered with. If you want to help out Defenders Live, this is one of the best ways that you can do it. You can also support them right there on the homepage. There's different options there if you're interested in that. And that'll help us continue the work that we're doing here so we can bring you people like AJ to the scene because, man, I've had so much fun with you tonight, AJ. And I just want to thank all of you guys for what you do to help out Defenders Live. So let's go into the Q&A and see what we've got going on there. Let's see. Kara wants to know, question for AJ. So many people become armchair gunsmiths from YouTube. Thoughts on attending a manufacturer's armorer course just to do detailed maintenance on your own guns versus just YouTube?
That's a fantastic question, and a question that gets fielded a lot. We actually didn't mention this in my bio, but I actually taught at a gunsmithing college for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So the same college that I attended, I later taught on. And the reason I say that is because there is a huge difference between getting formal training and getting YouTube training. Now, there are some amazing things on YouTube these days. There's some fantastic information that is being shared that, we could not have imagined the wealth of information, 20, 25 years ago, or 20 years ago when I was starting shooting. Like it wasn't there. That being said, there is a lot of stuff on YouTube that just you should not listen to, period. I come across videos every single day, whether it be gunsmithing or shooting, that it is just not accurate at all. I would highly encourage people, if they really are going to deep dive into guns and they're going to start messing with the function of guns, not just replacing a part with the same part, but the actual function of guns, to get into some type of armor course. There's plenty of armor courses out there, whether they're offered by the factory or reputable gunsmiths and armorers across the country. But that is always going to be the better route, much like firearms training, right? How you want to fast track your growth as a shooter, go get with a good instructor, and that's going to fast track it. The same thing with gun work. You want to fast track your learning curve on guns and not ruin $7,000 worth of parts. Get with a good armorer.
Have you done that too, AJ?
Yeah, I have. You know how some people have like their drawer of parts they've ruined? I have buckets.
Oh, no.
But
I have a holster tote.
Eggs.
I have a holster bucket of all holsters that have gone to die.
Yep. I have a giant one just of 1911 holsters that have run to die, and God knows I have holsters in there that I don't even know what they are. They're silly. But yep.
We've got another gunsmithing question here from Clint. Where do you recommend for gunsmithing school? I see a lot of marketing for an online gunsmithing school, but I'm extremely skeptical. What do you say to that?
So think about this, right? Anything you can do online is not actual gunsmithing. It is armor level at best, honestly. There are certain things that make a gunsmith. The ability to run machinery like a knee mill or a lathe is what gunsmiths are paid to do. Gunsmiths are like, think of it like this, right? It's like a car. And I forget who told me this analogy, but I always thought it was great. Armorers are like you taking your gun to the dealer and having like parts replaced with like parts. Gunsmiths, true gunsmiths, are like that hot rod auto mechanic that just can work on anything and everything. And then within that, they're used to making parts that shouldn't work on your car. That's what gunsmiths should be capable of. So
that would be hard to learn online, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, so I was teaching gunsmithing during COVID, and we were completely shut down, and we were forced to continue to try and teach via video. And in my opinion, gunsmithing via video cannot be done. There is way too much feel. There is way too much work required that it just can't be done online, in my opinion. Now, I know there's some great, there are schools out there that have gunsmithing degrees. I would, in my opinion, and this is nothing against them, fully support it. But that should be a starting point before you go to like a real gunsmithing school. That's a great armor type certification where you're going to get good information about parts replacement and maybe a little bit of stuff. But it's not the same as gunsmithing. And I hate for that to sound like, gatekeeping or whatever it is, but I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. You got to be there in person to do it.
Yeah, it takes hands-on skill. I mean, it's just, again, it's like saddle making. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot not like it, but
that's exactly the thing, right? Could you be a saddle maker via online courses?
No.
So same.
Yeah, same. Well, Adam has one last question for you. When are you going to become an HK guy?
When they build in 1911. I'll wait. I'll be
Good
here.
answer.
Bring
Good
it in.
answer. All right. Well, we just went over the hour. Hey, guys, I'm going to give you a tease for next week on who's going to be on and what we're going to be talking about. I'm super stoked for next week's guest, too. But AJ, do you have any parting thoughts for our wonderful audience who, by the way, I think every person who started with us tonight has gone all the way to the end. So you
awesome.
have captivated this audience tonight. So any parting thoughts?
Yes. First off, thank you all for staying tuned. I really appreciate it. It does mean a lot to me to be trusted enough to share information with people. I hold that very sacred to my heart. So, and even within, a live chat, that does mean a lot to me. So thank you guys very much. If I could leave you all with one thing, it's do not be afraid to make mistakes, because the only way we learn is to make mistakes. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and that's why I am where I am, because I have learned, or hopefully learned, from those mistakes. But if we're so afraid to make mistakes, our growth is stunted exponentially. So be willing to make the mistakes in your training and in your practice, and your progression will excel, I promise you. So thank you all for everything. And Laura, thank you very much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
You bet. Such good advice, AJ. I really, really enjoyed having you on tonight. We'll be in touch and stay in the green room, Kay. I'll be there in a minute.
I will.
Okay, guys. So I knew that was going to be a great one. AJ, so awesome. Really enjoyed that. But so let's look forward here to next week and see what we're going to have. May 3rd. Oh my gosh, we're in the last week of April. It's May next week, guys. Jeremy Horn is going to be on. He is the founder of Elite Performance, a mixed martial arts training organization in Salt Lake City. He's been an active competitor in MMA for over 30 years, and he's fought in over 180 fights during that career. Jeremy has fought in almost every fighting organization in the world and has also trained 6 UFC world champions. Jeremy was the former International Fighting Championships middleweight champion and the King of the Cage light heavyweight champion. I'm going to have to learn all the lingo. I'm sure he'll fill me in. But hey, guys, make sure in the comments, drop in what you would like me to talk to Jeremy about. I imagine mental toughness and longevity could be 2 good topics, but I want to hear from you guys because the show is for you guys. It's not for me. So drop in the comments what you'd like me to talk with Jeremy about. I have a feeling that's going to be an exceptional interview as well. And we will see you again next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Until then, take care.